It's just good. That's all there is tonight. For we are going to follow up and carry through on the earnings call. So it went something like this. It'll happen, got it quick, follow on. Something that Rachel called out was positive friction with sellers with this incremental fee. And it's been, I think, 12 quarters in a row that your sellers have been outgrowing your buyers. Is that making it tougher for search to improve? And would you rather see a narrowing of that gap? Yeah, that's such a good question, Laura. So yes, we have been saying for quite some time that we have quite a lot of sellers and quite a lot of inventory, and we want to make sure that we have enough demand to match supply. And so particularly seeing low effort sellers come on the platform, sellers that may not have the skill or the will, is more data we have to process, more, hand holding we've got to give to folks. And so having a group of sellers that have higher skill and higher will, these are the sellers I think that are most likely to succeed on the platform. Anyway, we think that that's very helpful, so that the early results from having just a small fee, $15, to set up a shop on Etsy, if you're not prepared to invest $15 to get your shop going on Etsy, you may not have the skill, the will to really succeed. So we're seeing that a little bit of a speed bump may be helpful. Josh talked about a few things about our quality and curation and really getting better at finding the good stuff, elevating that to the things you see first, and then suppressing or not uploading the stuff that's lower quality. So there's a lot of initiatives going on at the same time. That's all about keeping them, not only keeping the marketplace safe and secure, but really a focus on quality and being able to find the good stuff. So we also talked about actively removing things that don't comply with our handmade policy. So some of these things that we do on the upfront help us with the downstream efforts that we want to invest into. Really focus on quality, organization of the best upsite. And I can't help but pile on because I'm just really passionate about this. We've talked about the abundance of supply on Etsy a lot, but what does that look like in real life? When you search for something, we usually have thousands, and in fact, often tens of thousands of relevant results. And the first page of search results might be 30 things that look very, very similar to a buyer. That's just a lot of cognitive load. If these 30 things are virtually identical, can't you just tell me which one's the best, or what are the three and what are the trade-offs between them? And that's harder for us where we don't map to a catalog. But I think with the latest machine learning and generative techniques, it's easier and easier for us to start to understand what the stuff is, what's very substantially similar, and really try to give you fewer choices of the best. And in doing that, offer a lot more diversity in as well, instead of 30 really similar versions. We can offer much more different things, and that can also help buyers to understand the breadth of offerings that we have on Etsy. So not only might they have a more satisfying purchase experience this time, but they'll come back more often because they realize the breadth of offering. We have thank you next question of offering. Next question, thanks. Our question comes from Michael Morton. Please unmute your audio and ask your question. If I could, Josh, you spoke to seller removal, I think, being a gross margin headwind. It was an interpretation looking at some of the comments last year that some of the fraud that was created and poor behavior from non-compliant merchants could be actually like a gross margin headwind. last year. So just curious as you work through this process if this could be a tailwind to gross margins as you get some of the non-compliant sellers off who like maybe elevated levels of returns that are like outside of Etsy's protection program. So in terms of gross margins, possibly yes, and in particular it may not be non-compliant, meaning sellers that are not handmade, but just sellers that have higher levels of refunds or consistently ship late. So within the quality initiative, when we say we don't want to just get you to a product you're going to buy, but to a purchase experience that you're going to love. How do we have the search engine explicitly favor sellers that consistently ship on time, that consistently get 5-star reviews, that very rarely get returns? Our search engine has been very focused on relevance. Is this the item very closely related to what we think the person's likely to buy? In addition, relevance. We really want the quality of the purchase experience to be very important, and that I think is going to lead more satisfied buyers who come back more often, and should be lower cost of revenue through lower refunds. Separately, what I was specifically referring to in my comments was doing an even better job taking not handmade items off the site, and I know you've been talking about that with us, and we couldn't agree more that it's really important that Etsy be Etsy. And there's new technologies out there that make it easier and easier to spot. For example, does this same item exist also on AliExpress? And we assume right now, if that item exists on AliExpress, we assume it's mass produced and we take it down. You as a seller can appeal that you can tell us how you made it yourself and it still ended up on AliExpress. And by the way, that's true sometimes. You can appeal, but our default now is we take that down. That's just one example. Jen is actually going to be, I think, more and more helpful in understanding how much value did this particular seller truly add to the product. And we're looking to prioritize items that are really original, where the seller really added value, and then be able to explain to the buyer exactly where the seller did add value. Did the seller make it themselves? Did they design it and produce it with a production partner? Did they personalize it? I think that buyers are interested in knowing that, and I think we can make that a lot more explicit, and that also I think it's going to make the Etsy buying experience a lot more satisfying. And I just wanted to comment real quickly on, we've been doing takedowns. I don't know exactly how many quarters now, but with really leaning into it for at least the last 2 or 3. Yeah, so we've gotten successfully better at it. There we often talked about the substitution effects. We take things down. It does not necessarily mean a 1-to-1 loss of GMS when we do that, because we have so many listings on the site that there's often very similar items that customers can substitute for that. But it does hopefully mean we're taking down the low quality GMS, so that GMS that doesn't come with a high amount of chargeback or fraud or unpaid charges, we call it here. And the second thing I was going to say is that the growth margin impact may therefore be offset by improvements in the cost of revenue hits we're getting from some of the lower quality sellers that are on the site. So we'll go ahead and end it there. We did make some modest changes to the audio levels this evening. I'll go back and take a listen, make sure that we're all good. We'll continue tomorrow, and we're just getting through the earnings call. It's very interesting to actually go back and only read what is coming from the C-suite. I think it's very important, and to lessen a little bit of the opinion, gossip mongering, and that it's a very negative attitude that YouTube seems to enjoy when they are talking about Etsy. We want to keep things very upbeat but informative, and only be speaking what, as I said, the C-suite is speaking. So we will talk to everyone soon. Thank you for stopping by. Bye-bye now.